Hello, Michael. I'm sitting down with Michael Tompkins here, who's going to be one of the keynote speakers at Redefining Crazy Conference 2022, October 12th through 14th. Just wanted to start by saying hello. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Jeremy. Thank you so much for this opportunity to meet with you.
Of course, of course. All right. So, first question I have for you is what led you to working in the field of decluttering or working with decluttering?
Um, it was like many things in my life. It was, I just kind of like fell into it. So I started my practice and I was specializing a lot in cognitive behavior therapy for obsessive compulsive disorder. Um, and what I started to notice is that some of the people who were seeking help for the obsessive compulsive disorder had a lot of saving and keeping behaviors. And that of those individuals, while in obsessive compulsive disorder, people with OCD can have some saving and collecting symptoms, it is really quite different than people with, what we think of like as more of a hoarding condition, if you will, or something like that. And so I started meeting people like this where they were that the cluttering and the saving and the acquiring was just really more than I'd ever observed in my other clients. And so I got really curious about that and I started doing some research on the topic. And then that research led me to some fantastic researchers like Randy Frost and Gail Stickety and David Talon, and Jordana Muroff and Christiana Bradiotis, and just like, amazing researchers in this area. Um, and I started to learn more about it and then looking for ways to actually help people with it. And so that's when I started actually working with people who were looking for some help with their the excessive saving and acquiring behaviors.
Thank you. Yeah, that's that's an impressive pedigree, definitely, and yeah, that's really awesome that you were able to dive into that research. Um, how has your lived experience shaped your view of mental health over time?
Well, that's a great question. I wouldn't say that I have, well, I guess we all have a lived experience, but I have not lived with what I would consider a significant mental health challenge. Um, I I got into the field because I had tried a number of different things and it wasn't, none of those things were very rewarding to me and I really wanted to help people. Um, I do have, relatives who have had their mental health challenges like major depression and anxiety, excessive anxiety or one sort or another, but I've never really had more than what I would characterize as periods of worry, but not something that I would call disabling in any way. Uh, Even without a lived experience, one of the things that I appreciate about myself is that I really do think I can empathize with some and be compassionate towards someone who is suffering, regardless of what that suffering is. And you're absolutely right. I bring a great deal of privilege and fortune into my life and where I am in my life. Uh, and I think that's part of why I really have tried to give back a little bit in little ways.
Yeah, I feel similar. Yeah, use it for good. Yeah,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah.
Use it for good. Use it for good. Yeah.
Um, what can someone who has experienced hoarding and cluttering take away from your upcoming presentation this October?
What this training is going to be is an experiential training. And so I want the people to come prepared to actually grow a little bit around this. And so what I'm asking people to do, and the cool thing about this being virtual is that I'm hopeful that many of the individuals will already be in their living environment, you know, and for people to kind of collect a box of representative items, put them in the box in preparation for the training. And what we're going to do is it's going to focus on 2 skills. We're going to do a little skill building. The first skill is sorting, and the second skill is decision making. Both those skills are difficult for people who struggle with hoarding and cluttering. Sorting just means, in order to organize our environment, our living environment, in order to organize it, it requires us to be able to sort our items, our possessions, into categories, right? Not just like categories like keep or let go, but other categories like importance, unimportant, relatively important, keep, let go, give away, recycle. I mean, all of these are categories. And one of the things for people who struggle with hoarding and cluttering behaviors is that something like sorting is hard for them to do, in part because they've not done much of that. And that just the idea of putting things into categories brings up a lot of anxiety. And part of that anxiety is because many of them have trouble deciding what category to put something in, right? So if you're, because they're worried about putting it in the wrong category or any number of other things, right? So the result is no sorting, no categorizing, no decision-making, right? And so the first step to actually become more comfortable in organizing your environment is to sort, right? And so I want to give people the opportunity to kind of practice that with me on that day. And through, and not like letting go of anything, not making that what the people are going to sort, they are obviously going to keep. But what we just want to do is to take them and go through the experience of sorting those items in that box into categories, 3 categories that I'm going to give them. Okay? And then pay attention to what comes up for them while they do that, what feelings come up for them, what thoughts come up for them. Because what we know is that the more you sort, the easier the sorting becomes and the faster you become in sorting, right? Because you become more comfortable with the process of sorting, and then it becomes faster, right? So like any skill, the more you do it, the easier it gets, right? So we're going to do on sorting. And then the second piece around sorting is the second skill is we're going to be focusing on making decisions effectively. People who struggle with hoarding and cluttering and saving behaviors have a lot of trouble making decisions quickly. And so when you have trouble making decisions quickly, the default is not to make a decision, right? So you either kind of put it aside, you leave it there for now, you decide I'll come back and decide what to do with it later. But regardless of what gets in the way of the decision, you're actually not making a decision. And so what we're going to spend some time on is how to kind of come up with some decision-making rules and questions that you can ask yourself to help you make decisions a little faster. And again, just like the sorting, the more you apply that skill and more you ask yourself those questions, the faster your ability to make decisions will get. Now, there are lots of other skills that help people when you're receiving treatment for the problem itself. There are a lot of other skills you can learn, right? But we're going to focus on those 2 in that meeting.
That's a great exercise, and it sounds very solutions-based and hands-on too, which I know is something that specifically our San Francisco and Bay Area hoarding and cluttering community are looking for. I guess part of hearing you describe some of these skills, I think something that stood out to me, and in your synopsis of it is how you're putting names to some of these almost like tasks, right?
Mhm.
And I think for a lot of folks, those might happen, like you said, in a really quick, like snap decision making. But do you find that by focusing on giving the process a name of sorting and decision making, do you find that naming those and another moment that I noticed was when you said that, you know, when your people are putting off a decision, that's actually making a decision to not make a decision, right? So do you find that labeling these skills is
Oh,
effective?
absolutely. Absolutely right, Jeremy. I mean, awareness, self-awareness is the key to any change, that it starts with self-awareness. So regardless of what change you're going to make, it's absolutely critical that you be aware, not just of the problem in general, the difficulty in general, being aware, oh yes, this is a problem and this problem has a name, right? But also to be aware of the pieces of that problem that maintain the problem. And so what we're really focused on when we're trying to help people in their recovery is we're trying to teach them skills that they can use, um, that and those skills really are focused on factors that perpetuate the problem, right? And so difficulty sorting is a factor that perpetuates the problem. Difficulty making decisions is a factor that perpetuates the problem. There are several other factors that people with hoarding and cluttering behaviors struggle with that maintain the problem. Um, but those two factors are the ones that we generally start with because they're the most easily learned and applied. The other thing that you, as I was listening to you, Jeremy, your great questions that came up for me was one of the things that people who struggle with hoarding and cluttering behaviors have trouble categorizing. And then, of course, that's what sorting is, in a sense, is putting things into categories, right? And one of the reasons is that when many people with hoarding and cluttering behavior, when they look at their possessions, they label all their possessions as important. I mean, they put all their possessions into one category, important, right? And when you place all your possessions in one category, important, then the obvious thing that comes from that is to keep, right? And what sorting into relative importance helps you learn that actually there is a gradient of importance that we attach to possessions, right? That not every possession is of equal importance. And when you're able to actually label your possessions with a gradient of importance, it gives you more agency. It gives you more capacity to make decisions about what actually to keep and what to let go of and how to let go of it, right? And so, this label of importance is something that comes up for people that is, because again, it's like when I go and to organize my garage, I sort, I sort into categories. But if all of the possessions in my garage were of equal importance, then I'm not going to be able to put them into any other categories, which means that I'm not going to be able to recycle some or give away some or let go of some in some other way. So labels, how we label experiences plays a big role in whether we move ahead or we remain stuck.
Yeah, that makes sense. I could also see how that would lead folks to maybe begin to recognize patterns of how that importance for an item can change over time, like how the degree of it might change over time. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, that's very well said. And also,
Um,
I
mhm.
think the other thing that you're saying there, which is, I just want to underscore because I think it's really brilliant, is that when you struggle with hoarding and cluttering behaviors, the importance you attach to a possession is not, for lack of a better term, a rational label of importance, meaning that it's not something that you can step back from without emotion and say, that's not important, that is important. When you struggle with this problem, importance is a feeling, it's a felt importance. It's a felt importance. And so what happens with time with people is that that therefore the importance of a possession changes as our feeling about the possession changes. And so something that initially might feel very, very important, if we kind of like let go of it, what we would discover is that actually the importance of that possession after we've let go of it, the importance will feel less important 24 hours later. It will feel even less important 48 hours later. It will feel even less important 72 hours later, because the importance is really a felt importance, not a rational importance. And I use that word cautiously, but kind of like, does it make sense in my head versus does it feel true in my gut? And feeling true in my gut is like a felt belief, right? So the felt belief is the belief about importance, right? Even though it may not make sense, like this doesn't make sense in my head that this is all that important. But in my gut, when I think about letting it go, it feels really important.
Yeah, that's a great distinction. My next question is, do you find community support important for mental health recovery? And if so, why do you find in your research or just personally that community is important for mental health support?
Community is enormously helpful in mental health. And the primary reason that community, it can be so helpful, a supportive, caring, compassionate community can be so helpful, is that in this country, unfortunately, there still exists a very high level of stigmatization of mental health issues, right? Stigmatization of a mental health issue results in shame and embarrassment, and shame and embarrassment result in an unwillingness to seek help. And an unwillingness to seek help means people are trapped in the problem. And so this is where the Mental Health Association is, the mission is so vital to people in recovery, regardless of what that recovery entails. The support, the advocacy, the education, and the mission to destigmatize mental health issues so that people are more willing to seek mental health services and health is vital, absolutely critical, regardless of the problem. Right? And so I think it is absolutely essential.
Well
And
said.
how people enter that space, can influence their recovery dramatically. I mean, you know people, through the Mental Health Association who have entered through support, either support groups, education, and have then been able to take that and enter more active recovery and, maybe move into treatment or any other opportunity that influences their recovery. But it all started with a willingness to dip their toe in recovery. And that dipping point, that where they dip their toe is, feeling that support and that acceptance and that compassion that comes from being within a community of people with lived experience. And that that cannot be created. It is a natural space that only people of lived experience occupy. And it's a very powerful space that they inhabit. And it has done remarkable things in helping people, regardless of the struggle they have. So it's vital.
Yeah, in 10 words or less, what can you say to someone who's experiencing challenges with their mental health, or maybe specifically with their hoarding and cluttering condition? If someone's really in the throes of it, what would be like a mantra that you could give to them?
Enter any point at which you enter your recovery is a good point to enter it. And so, and that can look different for different people, you know. And I think that is what is so wonderful. And it's more than 10 words, but I think that's so wonderful about the multiple services the Mental Health Association of San Francisco provides to the community of people who struggle with hoarding and cluttering behavior, is that there are many places within the Mental Health Association of San Francisco that you can enter recovery, you know. And it doesn't really matter where you are. It's really just choosing where you're going to enter and entering it, and then trust the process. You know, once you enter it, trust the process, because the process that you will move through will take you through your recovery at the pace that makes sense for you. But you're on the trajectory, and being on the trajectory is better than being off the trajectory.
I have one last question for you, Dr. Michael Tompkins, and that is, what gives you hope for the future of hoarding and cluttering?
What gives me hope for the future of hoarding and cluttering is twofold. One is that there are scientists, researchers, mental health advocates who are continuing to work in the field to understand the condition, and through that understanding be able to develop resources and treatments that reach more people and help more people. And you know, how to reach people who are not yet open to help is, you know, a critical piece of that. But there are really super smart people working in that area, trying to understand that and develop, you know, interventions and help for people. And then I think the second thing that it gives me hope is that, you know, organizations like the Mental Health Association of San Francisco, continuing to advocate and educating the public, not just about hoarding and cluttering behavior and this issue as it stands, but mental health issues in general, just kind of the advocacy, because it is so badly needed. And I am very hopeful as I watch what is going on in the world and within our communities, that there are really very young, passionate people like you, who are really working that space. And there's a lot of work to be done, but I'm very hopeful that as we work in that space and that mental health is destigmatized, that more people are going to be reaching out and getting more help. And then people are going to suffer less, which is the goal, less suffering.
I hope to, be a part of that future, and I hope it comes to fruition.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sitting down and talking with me, Dr. Michael Tompkins. Please check out Dr. Michael Tompkins' presentation for the Redefining Crazy conference in October 12th through 14th, 2022. The presentation is called Sorting and Decision Making, 2 Key Skills for Effective Decluttering. Thank you so much, Doctor.
My pleasure, Jeremy. Pleasure meeting you. Take good care.
Likewise, be well.